What is the first step in applying for VA disability benefits?
The first step is to get that claim form and submit it to the VA. Nothing happens until you get the claim on the right form to the VA.
All right, and that's covered in so many of our prior episodes, I won't even bother identifying any. But how about what types of disabilities are eligible for VA disability benefits?
Well, pretty much any medically cognizable disability, whether physical or mental, is potentially eligible for VA benefits as long as it's disabling in the sense it imposes some limitations on you.
Welcome to the Victory Over VA podcast, a podcast about empowering veterans to overcome denied disability claims. Each week, we deliver critical insights to help you understand the disability process, veterans' benefits, and how to take control of your legal rights. Now here's your host, Tony Francis Jackson.
Welcome to Victory Over VA. This is your guide to unlocking your VA disability benefits. If you're a veteran applying for veterans benefits, subscribe for the latest developments in VA disability. So welcome to our podcast. I'm Francis Jackson. This is Christian Terrison. And what's this all about? Well, we're from Jackson and MacNichol, a law firm that specializes in getting justice for veterans by getting them the VA disability compensation they deserve. And who's this show for? Well, obviously it's for veterans, but it's more than that. It's for folks who care about veterans, folks who are related to veterans, folks who are supporting veterans. It's anybody who wants to help our veterans have a better experience. So without further ado, we're going to launch into our 50th episode.
Yes, the 50th episode, quite a hallmark for us. And we're going to celebrate by going through some of the most frequently asked questions that we field.
Okay.
And Jack, I know it's your training and instinct as an attorney to provide in-depth, comprehensive answers to every question. But for this episode, we'll give just a quick answer, a quick overview, and we can direct folks to some of our prior episodes that go a little more in depth.
So you'll give a shout out to the prior episode, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Well, so I guess to begin at the beginning,
yep.
This one, we get shockingly frequently. What is the first step in applying for VA disability benefits?
The first step is to get that claim form and submit it to the VA. Nothing happens until you get the claim on the right form to the VA.
All right, and that's covered in so many of our prior episodes, I won't even bother identifying any. But how about what types of disabilities are eligible for VA disability benefits?
Well, pretty much any medically cognizable disability, whether physical or mental, is potentially eligible for VA benefits as long as it's disabling in the sense it imposes some limitations on you.
All right. And for further viewing, I'll point folks to episode 17, episode 14. Both cover mental health conditions. Episode 33 is a special episode on PTSD. Episode 43 covers Gulf War Syndrome. And we have episode 49 on MST. So how does the VA determine if a disability is service-connected?
Essentially, they look at whether you can show a connection to some event or illness or disability or disease that's related to your service. And ordinarily, you have to show not only your current medical condition and that it happened in service, but a medical opinion linking the current problem to service.
All right. And we can point viewers to episode 19, which covers service connection in more depth. And episode 20 covers presumptions, which definitely want to check that one out. So how about what documentation and evidence do veterans need to submit with a disability claim?
Well, the best things to submit if you have them are some kind of evidence of what happened in service, whether that's an entry in the service medical records, service treatment records, or in the personnel file, or a buddy statement from somebody who was there at the time of whatever occurred, coupled with current medical evidence of what your condition is today.
All right. And we covered that topic in some depth back in episode 5. And then there's also a number of other episodes talking about the importance of regular medical care, which leaves a paper trail. How long does it typically take for the VA to process a disability claim?
Well, that's one
I know.
of those.
Good luck hitting that one in a minute.
That's one of those, how do you define a claim? But so the way it typically works, when you submit a written document starting a claim, the VA will typically come to some result on it within a year, often within 4 to 6 months. But if the VA turns it down and you have to go into higher level review or a supplemental claim or an appeal, it can take a lot longer. It's not uncommon for a veteran to need a period of up to 10 years to get all the way from initiating the very first piece of the claim to finally getting the last of the constellation of benefits he or she is entitled to.
And, to give some perspective, it's easy to get a 10% rating and, be done in a year. But the folks who are toughing it out for, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they're the ones we're winning them often hundreds of thousands of dollars in back benefits too.
That's correct.
So, for the time spent and the patience and the perseverance, it makes a big difference.
Oh, it pays off. Patience and perseverance are the keys.
What is a C&P exam and why are they important?
Okay. So 2 questions. First, what is a C&P exam? A C&P exam is simply what the VA calls a compensation and pension exam. When you file a claim with the VA, if they need medical evidence about the claim and there is evidence showing that there's a basis for service connection, then the VA is typically required under the McClendon case to get an examination, and they will typically send this out to a contractor to hire a nurse or a doctor or whoever to evaluate the person and provide a report.
All right. And they're important because?
They're important because those reports, generally speaking, if they are favorable on service connection, will be the basis for the rating that is assigned by the VA.
Okay. And how is the disability rating determined and what do the different percentages mean?
So the disability rating is determined based on a giant chart that the VA has in 38 CFR 4.25. And that lists a whole series of what they call diagnostic codes. And those codes are matched to various parts of the body, and there's a separate section for mental health. And those just provide a giant list, if you will, of what symptoms qualify for what level of rating. The ratings are in 10% gradations. They vary by condition. Some conditions are limited to as little as 10%. Tinnitus, ringing in the ears, for example, is you can never get more than 10%. There are other conditions like the heart where the rating might go up to 60%, but it's graduated.
And I was going to say, if you're looking for more detail, episode 46, we dive into the whole rating system. And so the one we just recently recorded. How about, can I appeal my disability claim if it's denied? And what is the process for doing it?
Well, the short version is yes, you can appeal if it's denied or if you get an unfairly low rating. And the process now comes in 3 parts. You can file a higher level review, you can file a supplemental claim, or you can file an appeal to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. Each of those has its pros and cons, and we've talked about them in other episodes.
Absolutely. And it's so important to our mission and what we think veterans should be doing to maximize their claims. That was episode 1. And then again in episode 24, we talked about some more in-depth appeal issues. What should I do if I disagree with the disability rating assigned by the VA?
Appeal.
There it is.
The short answer is appeal, although under the current system, there is an alternative possibility of a supplemental claim that may be a better choice in some circumstances.
All right. And again, episode 1, episode 24, we dive into those different options. How often can I request a reevaluation of my disability rating?
Well, realistically, you shouldn't do it more often than once a year. And in all probability, there's not much point in doing it until something happens. So to put that in context, say you go today and get an MRI of your back, that MRI might justify a higher rating. And so that's potentially an event that would trigger a reevaluation. But you need something that has changed. And sometimes it's just the passage of time, so a year or more.
What is the difference between temporary and permanent disability ratings?
Well, there are a couple kinds of temporary disability ratings. After surgery, the VA will typically give you a temporary convalescent rating where they acknowledge that for a period of time you are disabled as a result of the surgery, even though you're expected to heal up and get better. So that's one. The other, essentially all VA ratings are temporary until they make a determination that it's permanent and total. So by that I mean they can go back and change the rating based on new evidence up until the time they assign it a permanent and total categorization.
Are there any additional benefits available for veterans with dependents?
Yes, if you are rated at 30% combined or more, 40, 50, whatever, then there is an additional monthly small amount for eligible dependents, which would typically include a wife, children under the age of 18 or a little older if they're in college, or a child who has become permanently incapable of self-support before the age of 18, which the VA uses the term helpless child.
And also, I'll point our viewers to episode 45, where we cover benefits for spouses. Can I work while receiving VA disability benefits, and how does it affect my compensation?
Okay, typically you can work while receiving VA compensation, and that's based on what the VA calls scheduler compensation, meaning you have a condition that's on the list of conditions, has a particular diagnostic code, gets a particular rating, and that can be up to 100%. There are a couple of other special benefits that are inconsistent with working. If you're at 60% for a single rating or 40% for one rating plus 70% overall combined, the VA provides or potentially can provide a special benefit called total disability based on individual unemployability. And if they find you to qualify for that, you get paid at the 100% rate. That is inconsistent with being employed, since it's based on an inability to be employed. Although the exception to that
I was going to say, we go into great depth in episode 30 talking about TDIU and exactly how that interacts with different types of employment.
So there are exceptions.
You can find one, and it will be in episode 30. How do I apply for an increase in my disability rating if my condition worsens?
Typically, you would apply by filing either Form 526EZ for an increase or, depending on the facts, a supplemental claim.
And what are secondary service-connected disabilities, and how do you go about claiming those?
To take those in reverse order, you go about claiming those the same way you would claim any other disability. But secondary service connection is based on the notion that you have a service-connected problem that in turn causes a separate medical problem that is not directly caused by service, but it is caused instead by the service-connected condition. I'll give you a couple of examples. You have a bad knee, you try to climb a ladder, your knee gives out, you fall, and you break your left arm. The break in the left arm is potentially secondarily service-connected because the reason you got the break in the arm is that your service-connected knee condition caused you to fall. Or say you are receiving medication from the VA for PTSD, and that in turn causes you to have symptoms of obstructive sleep apnea. The obstructive sleep apnea is potentially service-connected, as a secondary condition.
And in episode 19, we plumb all the depths of service connection, including secondary service connection. Can I receive VA disability benefits for mental health conditions such as PTSD or depression?
The short answer is yes. The most common conditions that folks get mental health benefits for are depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. There are potentially others, but those are the common ones.
All right. And episode 14, we cover mental health generally, and then episode 33 is PTSD specifically. How does the VA handle claims related to Agent Orange or other toxic exposures?
Well, there are a couple different things going on there, but Agent Orange, exposure to Agent Orange leads to some very specific medical conditions, several cancers, diabetes, hypertension, the whole raft of those conditions. So if you served in Vietnam, either on the landmass or on ships in the territorial waters, and some other places, some bases in the U.S., for example, Guam, et cetera, where Agent Orange was used, then the VA presumes you were exposed to it, and if you have one of these conditions that is known to spring from exposure to Agent Orange, you can apply and will probably be granted with very little difficulty. The harder question is the other toxic exposures. There are just a lot of those, whether we're talking radiation, whether we're talking exposure to contaminated water at Camp Lejeune, whether we're talking exposure to burn pits.
Agent
There's a lot of
Orange,
them.
Agent Orange, we cover in episode 12, Camp Lejeune and associated claims is episode 21, and then the burn pit exposure is episode 47.
So all of those are out there. Go to those episodes for more detail.
What are the special considerations for veterans claiming benefits for military sexual trauma or MST?
Well, it's a little bit of a misnomer to say there are special benefits. The benefits are actually the same, but what we explained in an earlier episode is that while military sexual trauma normally results in an acquired psychiatric condition such as depression or PTSD, and the VA will give you the benefits for the depression or PTSD. The one piece that is truly special is that the VA looks at kind of circumstantial or ancillary evidence as a way to help you prove MST, and we've covered that in a prior podcast in quite a bit of detail.
And that was just episode 49. How can I get help with my VA disability claim? Are there organizations that provide assistance?
Sure. Most VA attorneys do not help with initial claims, but just so you know, we have a special program that we are doing where we look at VA claims, and if we think they are particularly compelling, particularly severe claims, we will actually help with an initial claim. But by and large, to get help with an initial claim, you will need to go to a veteran service organization, whether it's a state or local county service officer or a national organization like Paralyzed Veterans of America or Disabled American Veterans. But there are folks who will help you. You can go directly to the VA, and they have some folks who will directly assist you if you prefer.
Yep. And so our viewers are aware, for folks we do help in that first instance, making a first claim, there's no fee or anything like that.
That's
and
correct.
We cover a lot of this in episode 6, Call for Reinforcements. And our final FAQ question on the list, what should I expect during the VA disability claims appeal process, and how long does it take?
That really depends on what kind of a claim you have and what route you take. Under the current statute, which went into effect in 2019, there are 3 different approaches to appeals. You can go to higher level review, supplemental claim, or an appeal to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. And if you go to the Board of Veterans' Appeals, that's further subdivided into some tracks, they call them. But the short answer is that each of those has a different timeline. HLR is pretty quick, but unfortunately not very effective. Supplemental claims take longer but let you submit new medical evidence and therefore are more effective. And if you've been denied at those levels or at the initial level, and depending on the kind of claim you have, an appeal to the Board of Veterans' Appeals may be the most likely approach for getting help. The timelines vary enormously. For HLR, you're talking typically 6 months or less. For supplemental claim, typically a year, sometimes as much as 2, depending on special circumstances. For an appeal to the board, I've seen those done in very short periods of time, just a matter of a couple months, but typically you're talking a period of years. We're talking 3, 4, 5 years, depending on all the details of the claim.
All right. And we cover that more in depth in episode 10 on the rights of VA claimants. All right. Well, that was it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're happy to have been here for 50 episodes. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch the next 50.
We hope we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Victory Over VA podcast. Make sure to visit our website, veteransbenefits.com/podcast, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like this show, you might want to check out our free consultation to see how we can help you with your denied claim. Simply go to veteransbenefits.com and fill out the form. You fought for us. Now let us fight for you. And be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.